Welcome back, everybody. Medical Sales Live. Happy Thursday. Good to be here. Good to be here. So we got a great session today. So today we're going to be covering webinar tips for MedTech companies. That's going to be the topic. But of course, we're going to get through some Q&A. We have some great Q&A today. And so, of course, as always, comment with what city you are watching from. So whether you're a member of my program and you're on the Zoom, or you're watching this on YouTube or LinkedIn, go ahead and comment what city you're joining in from. Love to hear from you all. Okay, so while those comments roll in, let's get started with some of the key topics, okay? So let's roll through some of these questions. And of course, quick shout out or quick reminder to you all. So for those of you who are interested in learning more about my program, go ahead and go to my LinkedIn profile. You'll see a link in my featured section. And for those of you who maybe you can't afford my program, maybe it's the timing is not right, I have a nice little mini course. It's on discount right now or promo because I want to, share the wealth, right? So you can get that little mini course on upgrading your LinkedIn profile. It's great for interviewing. It's great for when you're raising money as a CEO. It's great for a lot of things. So your LinkedIn profile really is the product page for you. And so you want to get that buttoned up. Go to my profile. You can check that out, or check this post and you'll see a link for it. That's got a promotion for it. And lastly, if you're a capital sales rep, we're going to do our first deal rip live at the end of this month. That means that we're going to take a deal that was submitted anonymously, and we're going to invite some execs on, and we're going to rip it apart live in front of everybody. So if you want to submit your deal anonymously, right, you can get for free some of the greatest capital sales leaders and me to all look at your deal live and rip it apart, give you some feedback. Again, we're going to make it anonymous, so no one will know your name, your company, your product, nothing. But you're going to get the great pearls of wisdom that we all want from those kind of deals. So you can go to dealrip.com and submit your deal there. Okay, now that being said, let's get on to the show. So let's get through some questions first. Okay. Oh, thank you, Jay. Because, of course, for some reason, Zoom still has it where chat is disabled. Okay, everybody who's on Zoom, all those people on Zoom who are wanting to comment, I apologize. Jay, thank you so much. You saved the day. You can now comment in the chat. All right, perfect. Okay. Lindsay says, found out last. Welcome, Lindsay. Corey Rush, that's a new name. Corey from Omaha, Nebraska. Man, Corey, I hope you're staying warm over there. Okay. Let's get into the topic of today. So let's do some Q&A real quick. Hold on one second. Okay, that was loud. All right. Hopefully my resolution is not as fuzzy. If you're watching this on LinkedIn or YouTube and my resolution is bad, please leave a comment and let me know. Can't control that. All right. So oops, that's an old question. All right, so first question. What are your thoughts on doing an InfoCast style webinar in which you are not performing a traditional demo of your product, but being interviewed by someone else to increase your positioning? So thought leadership is always valuable. I think that it's good to have. It's good to do this, but what I would say is if you're going to do a webinar, meaning that you're going to spend time and resources to drive people to show up to a webinar and watch it, the chances that your CEO, that you as a CEO or you're a founder, that you have that kind of an audience, or people are just going to say, oh, so-and-so is being interviewed and they're going to show up, is very unlikely, right? It's just very low. And so if your goal, what you're better off doing that as a podcast, right? Where you can go on somebody's show where they already have an established audience and they're willing to listen. That's one way. Now, the goal of every webinar is what? To capture leads, of course, like this whole thing of like, oh, provide value and everything. Yes, everything, we always want to provide value, but at the end of the day, the value has to turn into, some kind of traction, right? But what I would say is, like, if your goal is a webinar, like, you're better off doing it in a way where you can ensure that a lot of people are going to show up, whether live or on demand, and watch it, and you're going to cover a topic. The chances that people are going to sign up to watch a webinar to watch one person being interviewed by another person, it's very, very unlikely. The only chances where that's going to happen, like where that might make sense, is if you go on a show that's got a good reach, with a reputable host, and then people who follow the show are like, oh, they're being interviewed on this show. I mean, for example, like, I've had people come on my show, The State of MedTech, mainly because they wanted to take advantage of not only my show's audience, but my own network as well, which is perfectly fine, right? But it just depends on who you're selling to and what the goals are. All right. What's a good way to engage a surgeon, for example, with the possibility of an advisor position in the future, but not having the product revenue to make them an advisor now? So that's a great question. And let me I'm going to share screen real quick. So that's a great question. And I'm going to reference, of course, our favorite. Let me go to the share screen side. We're going to do window. We want that. Okay. So let me share that on Zoom as well. Okay. So the big thing that you guys want to keep in mind is, when it comes to an advisor role for any kind of company, right? The people who you want as an advisor, especially in a startup role, is the people who fit this early market right here. Okay. And again, I always refer back to this stage, because you don't have to give them a whole lot of money. You don't have to give them any money at all. But what I would say is that if you don't have money to pay them right now as an advisor, you have to give them equity, right? And what I recommend is do it where, again, if I was structuring the deal, I would do it where they have a cliff, right? So they have to have 1 year in, and then they vest, let's say, 25% of their stock, and after that, they vest 1/48th of a stock every single month for like a period of 2 years, 2 or 3 years. That's what I would do as a company. Now, if I was an advisor, well, I am an advisor. So if anybody comes to me and they want me to advise their company in change for equity, I don't do the 1 year cliff. My thing is, from day one, I start vesting stock. And so it's a month to month, right? Because at that point, the benefit of doing the 1 year cliff as a company is that you might get an advisor and realize, like, they're not the right fit, and you just end that advising agreement before that 1 year. That's a really, like, terrible thing to do, by the way, right? So what I recommend is really make sure and ask yourself, right, is this the right person? Okay. Now, to get to that answer, right, are they the right person? Let me come back to full screen here, and let me do that on Zoom as well. To get to that point, to answer that question, here's what you have to ask yourself. Okay, Corey, we'll try and get to your question a little bit later. I have to take questions from the people in the program first. But Corey, I would go to my personal profile. There's a lot of great resources there. So, what I'd recommend is this. Okay, for being an advisor, these are the things that you want to look for. So, in no particular order at all, what I look for in a good advisor is, can they give great product insights? Like, are they good and proficient at using the product, and they're going to actually give us feedback that makes the product better, right? Next one, and that's hard to tell, by the way, right? Usually, and what I recommend is make somebody a paying customer first, and this makes this much better. The next thing is market insights. Like, are they plugged into their peer group really well? Can they actually give you real insights about where the buying decisions are happening and what's changed, right? That's the other thing. Next thing, introductions. This is kind of the easiest one, which is most people, then when they look at a good advisor, it's like, can they introduce us to people? You know, not believe it or not the most important thing, but like, can they make introductions? And the last one, which this is something that you can fix. Are they great at presenting? Are they a good presenter? They got good stage presence, right? And a lot of times, like most physicians, you know, nobody's really trained us. Most of them are not great, but you can get somebody, you can train somebody on the presenter side, you can train somebody on the introduction side, but on the product inside and market insights, you either have it or you don't, right? And something that I would say along with this is, just because somebody's like the chair of a department or like a really big name surgeon doesn't mean they're going to be great at giving you insights on the market or product. A lot of times, sometimes those people, they're going to give you input based on what they want, their preferences, not what's based on, you know, what's best for the company, right? So that's my main recommendation. Great question. Okay. Now, last question, and then we're going to get to the topic, which is the webinars, right? And this is a tough one. So the person, and let me message this person real quick to see if they are. Whoops. Sorry. Let me take that person off. There we go. Okay. I need to, here we go. Chat. If you want to come on. Okay. So, there's a person who submitted a question, and the question is, how do you post content when working at a large company without getting in trouble with HR management? And I'm going to read this question out loud. I just made the banner a little bit shorter so it could fit. So the question is like, I'm about to start my first role at a large organization, and I'd love your experience and advice on building a personal brand and essentially not pissing anyone off inside the organization. Spent the last 2 years at a startup where they initially praised me for posting because we had no marketing, but when we started to grow, they were pretty picky about my posts. They even asked me to take down a post when I no longer worked for them because a small detail of the post was indirectly linked to them. Like you've highlighted in the course and in the program, it's not effective to only post about your product and company. So it would be helpful if you had any tips on boundaries and things to avoid in content. I'd also love to use the new experience and stories, leaving out details in my content as I go, but not sure if the company will find that inappropriate. Yeah. So it's gonna be dependent on every company. Believe it or not, sometimes at like larger companies, depending on what position you are, like they don't really care that much. I mean, they care when you post about product. Let's be clear. So when you post about product or company related things, they care a lot about that. And so when you're going to post about a product, like your product or company, on the company side, only post positive things. No one's going to ever criticize you for that. So when I say positive things like customer success, like highlight your customers, show them in action, you know, those kind of things, that's great. No one's going to ever have a problem with that. Where the problems start to arise is when salespeople or marketing people post about the product. That's when legal gets involved. It's like claims and everything. I recommend just do not even do that at all, right? And be proactive about this. I would send a message to the marketing department and say, hey, you know, I engage a lot with my content on LinkedIn or whatever. You know, just ask. It should be in the employee guidelines. Look into the social media guidance that your company has. And if they don't have anything, then like you're good to go, right? That all being said, what I always recommend is think about the most like, well, actually, I'm gonna retract that statement. What you don't want to do is spend every time you're about to post to think like, oh, is this gonna make somebody pissed off at the company? Here's the thing, everybody, is that no matter what you do, you're going to like somebody's going to have a problem. Somebody's going to have the problem just for the fact that you're being, so let me give you a scenario. I won't mention this person's name, but there's somebody who's on LinkedIn who is a very influential person, and this person is extremely confident, positive, inspiring, handsome dude, extremely well dressed. I think you guys know who I'm talking about, right? And he left the company he was working at because people had a problem with him posting. Did he break any guidelines? Absolutely not. There are some people that they just get uncomfortable with that, right? And so you're going to have those people. They're going to be people who are naysayers. They're going to be people who are going to criticize you. You do not need to pay attention to those people. What I would say is focus on what makes your customers happy. And so for me, if you focus on creating content that engages customers, whether it's like books you're reading, leadership lessons, customer success stories, do that stuff, right? And don't worry about people who are going to make criticism. As long as you're not doing anything wrong at the company based on their social media guidance, you're perfectly fine. And by the way, the person who asked this question, I know the company that you're going to. While they are quite conservative, they have people who post all the time, right? And so what I would say is, just always make it about the company and the customer, right? Just document your journey, always make it positive and confident. And then outside of that, like, no company legally can tell you, like, on your Instagram, on your Twitter and everything, what you can do and say. Like, for me, on my Instagram, my Twitter, there are some topics that people get very uncomfortable about, right? And some companies try to tell me not to talk about that stuff. The way around that is that on your Instagram, on your other pages, you can mention that you're in medical device sales. But do not mention the company, because that's the one thing that they can come back and say, oh, well, you represent the company on this page because you stated here. Don't say it. Now on LinkedIn, obviously your name is going to be tied to that company because you're going to say you're employed by them, right? And so in that case, just be careful about what you post. And along with what you post, keep in mind when you leave comments, people can see those comments. So what I would say is always make them positive. If you disagree with somebody on something, like, be respectful. There's nothing wrong with disagreeing, right? And again, I think the main thing is, as long as you balance it out and make it about the company and your job, where people are like, okay, this person's online, but like, they're sharing, wins from their customers and their job and everything. They like that. For some reason, and again, this is at every big company, the moment they feel like, oh, this person has a life outside of us, they get jealous and they get really petty about this, right? Anybody that works at a big company, they'll either completely agree with that statement or they'll disagree. I don't really care. But this is just the nature of corporations, right? They want you to have unwavering, like, undying support and loyalty to them, and not have a life outside of their walls, especially in our industry. So again, just to kind of wrap up my advice on that one, read your social media guidance for the company, right? Make sure you're in line with that. Do not post product stuff with claims. If it's like, hey, look at our happy customer and look at them using our product and everybody's great and they're enjoying it, do that. Document customer success, right? What I would say is if you want to do some little marketing jujitsu, find ways to document happy customers, getting customer success and everything, where the product is there and not there. And at some point, the brain kind of merges those two things. So if let's say I'm a surgeon, and every time I open up my LinkedIn and I see this, person who asked a question, and all their posts are like happy surgeons, great customer success, all this stuff, I'm going to put two and two together and be like, man, I should use that product more, because, like, look at how happy these other people who are customers are, right? That's how I would focus on it. The last thing I'm going to say, at the end of the day, right? And I'm going to quote my good friend and mentor, Ken Husted, who said, like, look, company's going to tell you to go to hell way before you tell the company to go to hell, which means you can have all this undying support and loyalty to the company. And you know what? At the end of the day, you're just you're a number on a piece of paper. When times get hard and people can get laid off, they will absolutely do it. They do not care about your feelings, your family situation, whatever. They do not care, and they shouldn't. They really shouldn't, right? This is the nature of large organizations that are publicly traded companies. And so in that sense, the biggest risk you can take is by not having a professional brand. Because the moment that you get laid off or you want to look for a new job or something, you got to start that stuff all over again. And it's not easy. Okay. So hope that answers the question. And now let's get to the main topic. All right. Matt Kramer. No, believe it or not, that person wasn't. I am very handsome and well dressed, at least according to my wife. But no, that was actually somebody else. Come on, it's kind of obvious who I'm talking about. They own a shoe brand. That's the dead giveaway right there. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about webinar tips for companies. And for those who are watching on LinkedIn and YouTube, I'm probably going to end with a little bit of time. So if you have some questions, drop them in the chat. Corey Rush, you have a question. I'm going to get to that. So usually at the end, if there's time, I'll answer some questions. So let's talk about webinar tips for MedTech companies. Okay. So let's talk about what a bad webinar. Okay. So let's define this first by what's an absolute crap webinar. Okay. Here's a crap webinar. Okay. I'm going to start with bad webinar. Okay. What is a bad webinar? Lots of company branding. Product pitches, Q&A focused only to sell. Okay, that's a crap webinar. Okay, and here's my point. Okay, I run a business myself. I built my business off of webinars. Literally, my business was built off of webinars. It still is. But this is a crap because nobody in their right mind is interested to sit. Think about what it takes to watch a webinar, right? Has anyone? I've seen a lot of. I can't think of a single webinar where I was amped up to watch it. Okay, webinars. It's a version of TV. It's like a show. It has to be entertaining or at least educational. And so, if all your webinar is how blank XYZ product is pioneering, blah, blah, blah. No one cares. Absolutely nobody cares. Lots of company branding. Why? Terrible. Product pitches, right? Q&A focus only on selling, right? This is why most webinars in this industry, they have low attendance rates. They have even worse conversion rates. And then when you have a webinar like this and you get people signed up for it and you hand these leads over to sales, they're terrible leads. So this whole thing is just terrible. It's just this is where you can waste a lot of money and time. You can waste money. You got to, spend money to learn some things and experiment, but don't waste time. You don't get your time back, right? Okay. Here's what a great webinar is. Okay. So this is, in my opinion, what a great webinar entails. Okay. And I know there's going to be some marketers and be like, oh, Omar, but selling the product, just no. It like here's the other thing. If you're going to do a webinar, you don't just do one webinar. Like, and this is very specific to startups. You don't just do one webinar. Like there has to be somewhat of a strategy and series to these. Okay, a great webinar, in my opinion, non-branded, right? You want to have some like some of your brand colors in the webinar slides and everything. That's all fine. But if you got your logo all over the place, it's just really, it reeks of desperation and neediness. I hate marketing that reeks of desperation and neediness. Okay, that's number one. Number two, great webinars focus mainly on educating about a problem and educating about a solution. Let me be very clear. A solution is not your product. Your product is a product. Solution is a solution. Let me give you a great example. Okay. Here is, I just bought, and I would never attend a webinar like this. I just bought an ultra wide monitor, right? It's beautiful. I'm looking at it right now. It's literally 40 inches of heaven. Okay. Problem. Why having only one monitor is bad for productivity. Okay. So the problem is like productivity for let's say at home solopreneurs like myself. Okay. So you focus on that. It's like, hey, when you're, here are the problems that you encounter with productivity as a solopreneur. One of those things is the monitor. You would think that a monitor screen size isn't that important, but here's why. It's like, the amount of time that you spend swiping between pages actually adds up, blah, 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 blah. The solution is not having two monitors, right? Two monitors. Here are the problems with two monitors. Here's the problem with having like one very large monitor. The solution is you want an ultra wide curved monitor. Here are the benefits to those kind of things. This is why you need to think about these things, blah, 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 right? Then after you do all this education about the problem and the solution, then you can say, by the way, our company, this is what we developed for that, as a solution. Spend a few minutes like, here's like some things that are interesting about this. Then you just get right to Q&A, right? If you do a good job of this, the right people who want to buy, they want to learn more about, they're going to jump and say, I want to learn more about this, right? It'll be very clear. And your live Q&A, this webinar should not be your product person presenting it, because who cares about your product person? What people want to hear from is their peers or thought leaders. So invite a thought leader to give a presentation. Now, let me give you an alternative. Okay. What if you don't have any customers? What if you don't have any thought leaders? You need to do a webinar, right? The alternative approach to this, and these are example of great webinars. Okay. I was at a software company called Gentem. Okay. And when I was at Gentem, we had the same issue. Like, we didn't have KOLs to work with. So my thought was figure out what topics our audience was interested in. So we sold to private practice physicians. What topics are private practice physicians interested in? They're interested in the business of medicine, marketing, branding, those kind of things. We sold medical billing software. And so what I did is, you can have the same thing, okay? You can take this same thing right here, this same framework. So focus on a problem, here's a solution. You do an educational thing, but take the product thing, pull it up to the front, and you do a 3-minute, I would even call it a 2-minute pitch, okay? And so this is the benefit of sponsoring webinars. If companies were smart, they would realize there's a reason why Coca-Cola sponsors so many things, right? They want to be associated with all these great events in life, right? So let's say that you're a orthopedic company, okay? You sell implants, right? Sponsor some webinar on, let's say, the latest private practice strategies for orthopedic surgeons, right? Has nothing to do with your product. At the very beginning, right? You can introduce the topic, introduce the subject and everything, and then you can spend 2 minutes to explain, hey, thank you all for joining. We are XYZ company. Here's the problem that we've decided to solve. Here's why that problem is important. Here's how that problem affects you. The solution is XYZ. And from that solution, we developed this product. we're giving away a free analysis, blah, 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 whatever, technology demo. So if you're interested in that, we'll be sending you an email afterwards. Enjoy the rest of the webinar. And then you shut the hell up and you let people enjoy this, right? And if you do a good job of sponsoring, like, let's say, webinars on topics your customers are interested in, sooner or later they start to actually trust the people at your company. They trust your brand because you do a good job of understanding them, right? And it gives you a better chance that maybe they'll be interested in the product, right? But again, this doesn't seem very obvious, right? Because the obvious thing is like, well, I'm gonna do a webinar and I'm gonna talk about my product and how it solves a problem. Then I'm gonna sell from that. The problem is that worked 10 years ago, maybe 7. That world does not exist anymore, my friends. The buyer has changed. Okay, and I would even say, for those who are really savvy and they're looking into automated webinars. Let me see. There's the buyer has changed to a point where even now, some people will sign up for an automated webinar about a product, not watch the webinar, jump on a call and be like, yeah, what do you got? The buyer has changed because people are getting tired of webinars. So if you do a webinar, right, I recommend like investing some good money in it, like making it interesting, getting a good, getting an interesting customer or something. Like it has to be entertaining. Okay. Like, look, if you want a good example of this, and again, I don't mean to brag here, but like I do this for a living. Go look at the webinars that I've done on the state of MedTech, right? Go look at them. They're all extremely entertaining. They're all based on topics my audience wants to learn about, right? So you have to do these things. Like, this is like part of selling these days is a combo of education and entertainment. It's edutainment, right? And if you refuse to understand that, you're going to have a hard time in this market. It ain't easy anymore, right? All right. Now, okay, so Corey, Corey, let me answer your question because you're new to this industry. So Corey's new to medical sales. First of all, Corey, welcome to the great wide world of medical sales. This is the most rewarding job you're probably going to have. It's going to be the most difficult sales job you're ever going to have too. This is the hardest sales job on planet Earth. So Corey's question is, I'm new to medical sales and I've been in food sales for 28 years. And by the way, food sales is no joke. That's a tough world as well. How do you get to the correct person that can make a decision? Man, Corey, what a question. You should check out my course. So Corey, the easiest way for me to answer this is that depending on what you sell, right, you have to, let me break this down real quick. All right, Corey, you win today. So Corey, normally I don't go into details like this for people who are outside of my program, but because you're new to this industry, I want to take care of you, okay? So Corey, and by the way, Corey, can you comment? Are you even on still? Comment, Corey Rush, if you're on watching, leave a comment. Otherwise, somebody send Corey a message that I answered his question. Okay, so if this is the decision maker, okay, and we're gonna put little, like, that's the main person you're trying to get to, okay. The thing that you have to keep in mind is that in medical sales, as opposed to some other industries, let's say in the food industry, usually in the food industry, once you reach a decision maker, your persuasion is focused on that person. In medical sales, because healthcare is so complicated, there are a multitude of people that you have to persuade. And the key is, before you worry about influencing this person, how do you make sure that you have some sort of plan to influence these people? And I'm going to make this even simpler. Let's say that you sell a product to private medical practices, solo private medical practice. So essentially, It's one doctor. It's usually, let's say it's a surgeon, and they have like an office manager, a medical assistant, and a physician's assistant. That's it. So in a situations like that, it's like, oh man, I just gotta worry about this person. Even if that's the case where this person, let's say, makes all the decisions, they don't care about the team. These people are still going to have some kind of influence. And if you think about persuasion, a sales pitch for what your product does from these people on their worst day is always going to be more persuasive than you on your best day, because it's coming from a trusted and reliable source. So before you worry about the decision maker, you have to ask yourself, how does this person make those decisions in general, right? Is your product used by other people in the team? So if your product is used by a surgeon and a nurse, you got to worry about what the nurse's opinion is. Long gone are the days where a surgeon is just going to be heavy-handed with decisions and say, yeah, we're using this, right? It's rare to get that case. You're always better off as a seller to understand the personas of each of these buyers to find ways to influence the main decision maker. Because, what's a lot more persuasive, if you think about momentum, right? If you think about the momentum of just you and your product, right? And this is like a little car, maybe you have some momentum in there, right? Maybe you're really good at persuasion. But you know what? You can take somebody who's really good at persuasion like myself, and you can get somebody else who's in a vehicle, but they got these people in. That's going to be a lot more persuasive. It's literally like a physics formula. You cannot do the persuasion by yourself. You have to look at these parties and try and understand what makes them adopt the technology and everything. Plus, the other thing you have to understand, Corey, is that in a lot of cases, let's say you're selling to a department, the decision maker doesn't even buy the pencils on their desk. There's somebody else who actually does that, who owns the budget and everything. So the best piece of advice I can give you, Corey, and again, welcome to this great industry, is be a student of the game. The closer you get to the customer and the market, the more you start to understand and ask questions and start figuring out, like, how do these people buy things? How do they make decisions? Where do they find their information? So on and so forth. Then that's when you'll find success. So hope that answers your question. Okay, so now, to my surprise, we haven't even hit the top of the hour. We've answered all the questions. We covered the topic of the day. I'm going to leave it open up. So for those who are on Zoom, if you have a question, please raise your hand or drop it in the chat. And those on LinkedIn, if you have a question now, go ahead and drop it in, and I'll be happy to answer it. And while we do that, we got Melissa Clement from Detroit, Michigan. Hey, Melissa. We already mentioned Corey coming out of Omaha, Nebraska. All right. Going once, going twice. All right. So it looks like, let's see. Looks like we don't have any other questions for today. Thank you all for attending as always. And again, for those who are interested, let me pull up the banner. If you're a capital sales rep and you got a deal, you need help with your deal, go ahead and go to dealrep.com and submit your deal there, and we're going to feature it. So it looks like our deal has been picked for the last week of January. So we're going to do that live here on LinkedIn. That'll be a webinar. It's going to be a lot of fun. But go ahead and just go to dealrep.com. You can submit your deals anonymously there. It doesn't matter what it is. Okay. And for those who are interested in my program, go ahead and DM me. I'll send you a meeting link. We'll see if you qualify. And in the meantime, if you are super ambitious and eager, and while you wait to get a meeting with me, you want to just, get a hold of some information, go to the top of my profile. My LinkedIn profile upgrade mini course is on sale. You can go check it out right now. All right, everybody. That's it for today. Have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you all next week. Bye for now.